So this is how the logic system works. So today what we're going to do is we're going to make a NPC and we're going to make him interactable with the player. So let's just pick a random character here. Let's just say Mr. Bob. He exists. There he is with his blue scarf. Now, by default, he's not going to do anything. He's just gonna walk around, you know, back and forth like he does, because that's his default. That's his default code. So if I go into edit object here, you can see he has some code for, like, you know, blinking, talking, walking, whatever. He has a variable called walkable, he has a variable called walkable, which I usually turn that off in the creation code for some objects, so that they don't walk around and waltz off screen. So anyway, walkable equals 0. That's not important, though. What is important is that we're going to go into the logic folder and then go into o_logic_board. That is the most important thing. And how this is going to work is we're going to put this somewhere in the room and we're going to just size it up so we can, you know, have a little bit of space to work on it. And, you know, by default, it doesn't really know what object it's going to link itself to. So what we're going to do is we're going to base it off of this, our friend Paco over here. We go into creation code for this and it says child equals whatever. And now what GameMaker can do is you can just right click an object and you can do copy instance name, and that'll get the actual name of the object in the map. So in this case it's inst_7EA6FC whatever. I could also rename it, rename object instance. I could do like Mr. Bob 1 or something, like cool. ID is Mr. Bob 1. So now if I come over here into the board, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to do child equals Mr. Bob 1. Okay? And then it's going to understand that this is the object that we want to link this board to. So any sort of information or logic pieces that we put on this board will be applied towards this object. That's the object that we're going to be working with here. So what we're going to do is we're going to make him talk. We're going to make him say one thing. So we're going to go into the logic here, and there's a whole bunch of different things. This is very easy to add more, but what we're going to select here is we're going to start off with a player sensor. And we're just going to place one of those right here. And then we're also going to use a player interact queue. And that will give us the little exclamation mark over his head so we can know to interact with him. And then we're going to add a magic mouth, because that's what he's going to use to talk. And that's all we need. That's all we need for now. We can get more complicated with this, but this is just what we've got for now. So the way that this will work, I'm going to get rid of these camera zones because they're bothering me. They're in my way. So the way that this works is everything is wired up in a very physical way, and the way that I currently have these pieces labeled with their outputs pretty much represents what is going to happen, you know, when something, well, let me explain it like this. So the green things are sensors, and then anything else is either a gate or just a logic piece. So this magic mouth is, like, obviously it's an event. It's something that's going to happen. But the green ones here that are shaped like this represent something needs to occur in order for this to happen. So in the case of the player sensor, if we go into edit object here, you can see it expects a expects a variable called range. And the default range down here is 32. But we're going to make that a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go into the creation code here, and I'm going to do range equals, let's just say 64. Make it a little bit bigger so you can talk to him from a little bit of a distance. And now the two outputs on this are, there's a one-shot and then there's a constant. Now the top one is a one-shot, which means when you enter that range, that circular radius around Mr. Bob here, 64 pixels, or 64 pixels in either direction. That's the radius, not the diameter. So it would be 128 around him. If you enter that range, the top one will trigger for 1 frame. Now the bottom one is a constant, which is what we want in this case, because we want to, you know, let the player know, like, hey, you can interact with this so long as the player is within that range. So we're going to go into logic here, and we're going to pick O_logic wire, and we're going to just place that on top of the constant output and drag that over to the input here, which is a little exclamation mark, which implies that, hey, we're going to notify the player that he can interact with this. Now, this next piece here is the player interact queue. So whenever you come up to an NPC and you see the little doot-doot over his head, the little exclamation mark, and you hit the E button to interact with him, that's what this logic piece is doing. It's basically saying, like, it's going to give whatever object this board is linked to. So in this case, this board is linked to Mr. Bob, so this is going to apply to Mr. Bob. Anything on here is going to apply towards whatever this board is linked to. So in this case, Mr. Bob's going to get a little exclamation mark over his head, and as soon as you press E, then this one shot's going to happen. And of course, it's not going to be a constant, because we don't want a constant for something that's going to trigger once. Like, you only press E once, you don't hold E. So in this case, the one shot, we're going to just make this simple here, and we're going to link this up to the input on the mouth here. So pretty much consistently, the inputs will always do what you would expect that they would do. So in the case of a magic mouth, this is going to open up dialogue. And the left-hand input is implying that it's going to trigger the dialogue. So I will add a wire here and connect it over to that. Don't worry about the layering or whatever, it's fine. So what's important here is that we see, okay, so the player's within the range, cool. We're going to send a signal out here, and then we get a player interact queue, cool. So the player presses E, and then it fires out this signal here, which goes into the mouth. And then this is the dialogue input. Now the mouth is a little bit confusing. I'm going to go into the edit object. There is documentation, but I'm going to write up better documentation in the future. For now, just observe the way that the way that all the different variables inside of the create event. So usually I just copy a different magic mouth because I don't really always remember exactly what I don't always remember exactly which variables it is, so I just copy it as a template. And I come over here and I just paste these same ones in. So strang is referring to the actual string that he will speak. Strang name is the name of the NPC. Gibberish type 1, I'm going to change this back to 0. And then voice SFX refers to the sound effect that will play. You know, whatever. This stuff isn't really that important and detrimental to making the logic system work or not. I'm just kind of giving you a brief rundown as to, you know, how a magic mouth works. So gibberish type 0 implies it's going to play a sound every other few letters, and then gibberish type 1 is going to be like a constant speaking of a sound effect. So we have gibberish burps 01, which is like a looping burping sound. So in the case of gibberish type 1, we would want a looping sound, but we're going to make it 0, and then we're going to go into our sounds here and pick voices. No, not voices, sorry, gibberish. And we have a whole bunch in here to work with. So I'm going to do sound voice Mr. Bob as the voice, the gibberish voice, and then strang, I'm just going to make him say, like, hi, Crunk. I'm talking using the logic system. And then his name is obviously Mr. Bob. And now I've designed this specifically so that all of this stuff can be very, what's the word? It's all very plug and play. It's all very portable. So you can just edit anything that you need to edit in this, and it will work accordingly. So what we're going to do now is, obviously, when he's done talking, this interact queue has not been re-triggered. So we need to wire it up to the green input, which implies, hey, we want to notify the player that he can do this again, because as soon as the player presses E and it goes out here, it's going to disable this from working again. So we have a couple different outputs here. We have the top one, which implies that one's going to fire when the dialogue is over. We have a constant, which will be in tandem with when he's talking. And then we have dialogue closed, so when the player closes dialogue, that's what's going to happen. Actually, no. Sorry. The top one is the top one fires in tandem with him talking. So if I want to make him talk and a door opens up over here or something at the same time, you'd use the top one. Middle one is constant, so as he's talking, this is always being powered, and the bottom one is when it's closed. Right. So I'm going to wire this out here, and of course, think of wires as like having an actual electric current in them. So wires can touch other wires, and it will carry the current through a collision event. So yeah, that's pretty much how that would work. And now, if I did that right, I should be able to hit the check mark. And now I'll just load up the game here real quick. Okay. Now I should have done everything right, so I'm going to come over here. Oops, let me move this over so you can see it. Yep. So if I did this right, there we go. Everything works as it should. So I'm going to hit F1, and you can see how it's actually supposed to look. You know, walk within his range, and you can see you can talk to him. Press E. And then he talks. You press E and close it, and then it reopens it. And you can see over here with the logic board that when I walk into the range, the green wire is powered here. And then as soon as I hit E, you'll see this one light up real quick. Maybe you didn't catch that, but it did for like 1 frame. Then this happened, and then what's going to happen when I close this is it's going to power down through here, up into that. Yep, and there we go. And now we can talk again. And he works as he should. So that's just a quick rundown of how to use the editor, the logic system. You can also do things like if you really wanted to edit the instance properties and make the board a different color. Like let's say you had a lot of boards in a level and you wanted one to be yellow or one to be green, you know, whatever. I'm going to do one other thing, which I think is always a fun thing you can do. I have powered cameras, and one of the best things you can do with the constant output of a Magic Mouth is have a powered camera. So that's going to be there, and I'm going to wire this up to the camera zone. And then I'm going to go into UI, camera, and then O_powered_camera_zone. And the way that this works is it's going to set the view height to be the top and bottom of this region. So let's say we want to make it zoom in on Mr. Bob while he's talking. It'd be more like that, and then the camera would be zoomed in like this, roughly. And then let me edit this object so I can see here. So the camera, it is literally the variable called camera, and letterboxing is false. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the creation code in this. Letterboxing equals true, because we have like a cinematic thing, and then camera equals, and then I'm going to just grab the copy the instance name of this camera zone right here, this powered camera zone. Camera equals that. And so long as this cam zone is being powered, it is currently linked up to this. And what should happen is when he talks, as he's talking, only when he's talking, it should be zoomed into him like this, and we should have letterboxing on the top and bottom. Now if I did that right, everything should be good. Let me play this real quick. Oops. There we go. Oops. Make this a little bit bigger here. So I'm going to come over here. And now if I did this right. There we go. And now we have some sort of a cinematic camera as it zooms in on him when he talks. Awesome. So you can mess around with this. There's a whole bunch of different logic pieces in the game that you can work with. I have everything from There's a money sensor, there's a mission sensor, there's a player interact sensor, there's a player in region sensor, there's an AND gate. So like let's say you had like 2 different inputs, it would check to make sure both of them are powered, and then it would output. There's an OR gate. There's an OR gate, AND gate. There's a NOT gate. There is a destroyer. There's a global lighting changer. There's a music box. There's a mover, which will set the horizontal and vertical speed of something. There's a mission trigger, which will set a mission unlocked or uncompleted or anything like that. There's an animation tweaker, which will let you change the sprite of something. There's a bunch of stuff. And the thing about it is it's very easy to add more. So if you come into logic here and you go into like player sensor, for example, maybe this isn't the most simple one to work with, despite the fact that it's, you know, kind of the simplest. I think the money sensor is a good example of this. So what it's doing is it's creating this object called O_IO output, and also it creates O_. Yeah, there isn't an input in this case. There's an O_logic IO output and O_logic IO input. And what it's doing is it's basically just checking to see if the input object, which I'm just going to open this up. This is what the IO object looks like. It's just a little white box. Literally, it is just a collision sensor, and if it's detecting something that is currently being powered, then it will power something else. It's linking up objects, and it's difficult to explain, but it's just reading a value from another object, basically, and basically working with actual currents. So long as a wire is powered and it's colliding with an input, then the input will send a signal to, you know, a logic piece, and then the logic piece will send a signal to an output object. It's all just linked up, but it's so easy to add more. I would just copy like the money sensor or something, and you change amount or whatever, and then you go into step, and then it's like this is all I've messed up. There we go. Okay, this is all like negligible. Like this can be changed to anything. And all it does is just set the output object to 1 or 0, or anything in between for that matter. So just study it and see what you can do. Lots of potential with this.